Hey, this is Meridith Elliott Powell, and welcome to Thrive, Turning Uncertainty to Competitive Advantage, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to turn uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage. I have got a really amazing guest today, somebody that I'm privileged to call a friend. He has been named everything under the sun. Now, Eddie Turner is a principal consultant, executive coach at Linkage Incorporated, but he was just recently named number 32 of the 200 most powerful voices in leadership. Eddie, you have been named top 6 in motivational speakers in the world, and just a countless list of the things that you have been named and the awards and accolades that you have. So super excited to have you today. Welcome to the show.
Well, Meredith, thank you for having me here on your amazing show, Thrive. And number 1 on that list should be friend and fan of Meredith.
That's right. I'll come up with an award. Now we are gonna discuss the changing face of leadership. So you hold right there. I'm gonna kick the show off, and when we get back, I have a whole list of questions for you. And audience, chime in because we want to hear from you as well. All right, Eddie, here we go. We have a lot to talk about. You know, one of the reasons I founded the show was I really want people to start to flip the script about how they think about uncertainty and see the opportunity in it. So before I dive into everything I want to ask you today, tell us a little bit about Linkage and the organization that you're a part of, and what exactly the mission and the goals of what you all are trying to accomplish from a leadership perspective.
Sure. Well, I began consulting with Linkage about a year and a half or so ago, but it was right during COVID, so I didn't do much. But I did find myself fully in love with the work of the organization. The CEO, Jennifer McCullough, who invited me to join Linkage and change the face of leadership. That's the tagline of the organization. And being a leadership development professional myself, that just resonated with me. The idea of changing the face of leadership was about helping. Their biggest program is women.
Yeah.
The Women in Leadership Conference that Linkage has run for the last 22 years has been very popular. There's also another one for leadership development. So be it conferences, consulting organizations, coaching leaders, issuing assessments, or through training and facilitation, Linkage helps change the face of leadership around the world.
I love that. And I love especially that you focus on women, because I think if there has never been a time when it is more important for women to go into leadership, it's right now. I mean, when I think about the uncertain marketplace, but when we started doing research on uncertainty, when we really started studying how it impacts organizations, and uncertainty remains the number one worry of CEOs and leaders today. One of the most fascinating statistics that we found was that older millennials, those of really moving into leadership positions right now, are struggling the most with leading in an uncertain environment. So when you think about what's happened in the last couple of years, what do you think some of the biggest challenges are facing leaders right now?
Dealing with uncertainty, as you said. Many people want to just corral the uncertainty and make it certain. However, in uncertainty, there are opportunities. As you and I well know, through the last uncertainty that we faced, perhaps one of the last ones that was big on the horizon was the 2008 financial crisis. Well, out of that, we saw Uber come out of that. We saw Airbnb. We didn't know what those were. Now they're verbs.
Yeah, right. Great point. Yeah.
So we don't know what's going to come out of this current crisis that we're facing. But the ideal is, can we embrace uncertainty and do what we can to be certain? So for some people, that's meant growing their leadership skills through programs like what Linkage offers. Other people I know, they've gone back to school and gotten more credentials by way of a degree or an executive certificate. In other words, not letting ourselves be victims of uncertainty, but taking control of it, doing what we can, controlling what our circumstances allow us to control.
So, what are some of the most important skills you think that that leaders need to have right now? You mentioned the crisis of 2008. Now that almost seems mild compared to what we've gone through in the last couple of years. So, what skills do you think leaders need now?
Well, for that, I think I would look at the purposeful leadership framework that Linkage operates under.
Okay.
And what that means is, very briefly, this is something I'd like to share with you. When we look at the purposeful leadership framework, the purposeful leadership framework says that there are 5 keys to being a purposeful leader. Number one, a leader must become a more effective leader. It's the inner journey. Who is a leader becoming inside? Then we start to look outside. They have to be inspiring, engaging, innovative, and then they are able to achieve. But you notice there's a green going around this diagram.
Yeah.
And that is because what we have found is the most purposeful leaders are also inclusive leaders. Inclusive leaders are purposeful leaders. We can't have one without the other. So I'd say if a leader wants to be effective today, this is what they would be working on first and foremost.
And so, do you feel like, obviously, the work you have to do on yourself first is internal? Is that where you begin with a leader? I mean, if somebody were coming to work with you, work with Linkage, work with any coach, you have to do the internal work. Is that where it begins?
Leadership is an inner game, and then it's an outer game. In fact, one of the famous books from Tim Galloway, when I began studying coaching, because I can't give someone what I don't have. Okay. So a leader must work hard on her or his own thinking and who they are internally. Do they have what's at the core of an individual as a leader? Where's my moral compass? Where do I lead from? Now I can emanate out, and that can be a manifestation. So when we think about being inspiring as a leader, it's about how we lead by word and example. One of the things that Linkage calls it is the ability to communicate evocatively. So it's how we communicate with our mouth, but then it must be matched with actions. When I was growing up, some of the older people would say, "Don't preach me a sermon, show me one."
Yeah, so true.
So we must live what we speak.
So true. I mean, the actions matching your words is so incredibly important. Years ago, I was doing some work for a large CPA firm, and they were losing a lot of younger people because younger people didn't want to work like 80, 90 hours a week. So the CEO came out and said, look, you can become a partner. You don't have to work more than 50 hours a week. And 6 months later, he still found they were losing the same amount of people. And he finally went out and he said to these, this younger generation, I told you don't have to work this long. Why are you still working? They said, because all of the partners do. And we don't believe you. And so he really hit him like a light bulb. And he went back and told his executive team, we have to go home Friday at 5 because we have to model what we say. So powerful. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see leaders make right now? I mean, not intentionally, but where are they getting derailed in the face of an uncertain environment?
I'd say 2 things. Number one, not willing to be vulnerable. Sometimes there's the desire as a leader to want to look like we have it all figured out. We're under control. We're calm, cool, and collected.
Yeah.
But it's a time for a leader to just be vulnerable and say, especially with the start of this crisis, hey, listen, I don't know the answers. None of us do. This is something we've never seen. It's a once in a generational situation we're facing. So while I don't have all of the answers, what I do know is together, collectively with our intelligence, we can figure it out. The other thing I'd say is at Linkage, we focus a lot when it comes to our Advancing Women program about some of the hurdles. And some of those hurdles are the inner critic. What are we telling ourselves? Now, that book specifically is the inner critic is for our women. Oh, sorry, I got my mark.
well, we can tell that you practice what you preach because you're reading the book.
But yeah, so with our inner critic by Susan Brady, one of our key pieces of thought leadership at Linkage, that there is the need to re-examine the stories that we're telling ourselves. So both as we communicate externally, but again, going back to internally as a leader, what are we telling ourselves and how do we get over these hurdles?
Eddie, what's your story? Like, how did you get so passionate about leadership, and what put you on the journey for leadership?
I spent the first 15 years of my career as an information technology professional.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, number one, I had the great privilege of working at some of the best companies in the world, as Forbes calls them, the world's most admired companies. One of those companies was GE. And at GE, at the time, before this company named Apple became number one in market cap, it was GE. And they were the first corporate university. So I had studied a lot of leadership through the programs that GE offered. And I always say I saw the best lead the best, because if you were a GE manager leader, everybody wanted you. Well, I got to a point where they said, listen, we'd love to do more with you, but you don't have a degree. So we can't advance your career here. And so I ended up enrolling at Northwestern University. And it was the first year of a program that they offered, Leadership and Organization Behavior. If you'd asked me, is that something I would sign up for normally? The answer would have been no. But that topic interested me. It was tailor-made for adults like myself who wanted to finish a degree, and it was the inaugural program. And what I learned in that program changed my life and put me on the path that I'm on today.
And so you graduate from Northwestern. Did you go back into information technology?
I did, briefly.
Okay.
But, a couple of years later, one of the gentlemen who came to be our guest speaker, his name was Bob Dean. At the time, he was the global head of talent development at Heidrick and Struggles. At the time, the top executive search firm.
Okay.
And so he took me on his wing and taught me the business of learning and talent development. I later on would go back and get training at Harvard, studying under some premier leaders there, and other endeavors to certify myself and get qualified to do work in this space of developing leaders. I feel passionate about leadership because I believe that the world needs better leaders in every area. All right. Community, be it in corporations, on the political scene, wherever it may be. How do we make those that are leading others more effective? That is my passion, and I feel is my calling.
So, I love that, because I couldn't agree more. And I love the fact that you need them. You feel like we need them in every aspect. I mean, so true. We're just not talking about corporate America here. I mean, you're a brand new dad. We need them at home. We need them in our community. We certainly need them in politics. But since you've been playing this game for a while, how have you seen leadership change? How has it evolved? And is it more difficult to lead now than it used to be?
Leadership's evolved in a number of ways. Number one, I'd say a lot of things you could do earlier in my career, you can't do anymore. Your boss could literally just say anything to you and you have to suck it up.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Oh, the good old days.
Yeah. There's a lot less tolerance for that now. I'm sure there's some places that's still happening, but there's more ramifications for that. There's more of an unwillingness to tolerate certain behaviors. So I'd say that's number one. It's forced people in a leadership position to recalibrate. The second thing I'd say that has happened is, over time, I believe more people understand you do not have to wait until you have a title to be a leader. That more people believe in leadership without authority, a principle that Dr. Ron Heifetz made popular at Harvard. Many others have since written about that. Keith Ferrazzi and so many more have talked about this concept that people can be a leader at any point in their life.
What, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about what everybody is talking about right now, and that is the Great Resignation. A, did this surprise you? And B, just in general, what are your thoughts on it? And then what are you doing at Linkage to kind of help your clients navigate it?
Well, the Great Navigation, the Great Resignation is because more people are taking control to navigate their careers. In so many ways, some people they never liked the job they were at.
Yeah.
And they just tolerated it. And as we're emerging, hopefully, out of this crisis of the epidemic that's engulfed the globe, people have been forced to reevaluate their priorities. And so some people are deciding, I'm not willing to go back into this particular line of work or to this specific organization. And at the same time, also, at least in the United States, the employees have more power to demand more compensation. And so people are taking advantage of this opportunity to do what they really want to do. And in some cases, that's even working from anywhere in the world and still keeping your same job.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that have kind of come together at one time and made it possible for people to really pursue what interests them and is in the best interest of their families. And it's also made employers have to get creative in some ways, but in other ways, do what probably would have taken another 10 years to do. And that is simply embrace hybrid work opportunities or virtual work opportunities for their staff.
What do you think that, beyond hybrid, what do you think that leaders need to be doing today to hold on to their team members? I know so many leaders that feel a little overwhelmed and defeated by the Great Resignation, when I think quite possibly it could be your greatest opportunity.
Oh, no question. It's your greatest opportunity to hold on to people because, for example, as we talked about there's an article that came in from Working Mothers just a couple of days ago, I believe. And it was talking about these new job titles that have been created on LinkedIn for working mothers because they had to explain this gap in their employment. Well, hopefully now, as a result of the Great Resignation, opportunities are being created. Why do you have to come back into the office? Can you still be a working mom and keep that job and not miss out on the promotion cycle by being able to work virtually? And it's more acceptable now. It's more acceptable now to be able to have your daughter on the call, as I end up myself having to do sometimes. As my wife and I, working from home, have the ability to kind of have her right now because the school's being closed. Well, that would be frowned on in the past. And now people are a little bit more accepting of that. So at this great time, can employers go beyond lip service to our employees are our greatest asset and really show it by how they treat people? We look at what happened with Southwest Airlines initially at the start of the pandemic. Where some people airlines were very quick to dismiss employees. Southwest said, we're going to take a pay cut, starting with the CEO. He says, I'm not going to take a salary. The next level below me is going to take a 20% pay cut. And we're going to ask the union folks to take a 10% pay cut. But we're not going to lose one employee. And that's what they did.
Yeah.
And that allegiance and fidelity to employees has been rewarded.
Yeah, back again to your actions matching your words, right? I mean, you've got to show it all the way through. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about women in leadership. If I'm sitting here as a CEO and I want to diversify my my leadership base. And I know as a female leader coming out in corporate America before I went out on my own, it was different for me to develop a leader. I mean, I'm so grateful to men because many doors would not have opened for me if a lot of men above me, I came up at a time when it was typically men in leadership. If they didn't take an interest in me, if they didn't open doors, but often they didn't understand what I needed as a female to be developed. Not their fault. They just have a different experience. What are some of the things that, if I want to develop more women into leadership positions, that I need to think about? What are some of the things that you focus on, Linkage? Because you take such an interest in developing women leaders. What are things that CEOs or even business owners need to think about?
Well, one of the things we do is we have an assessment that we issue that allows people to see where they are. And in fact, as I talked about that inclusion cycle earlier, we have an assessment so that leaders can examine how inclusive they are. And as a leader, as you mentioned, men typically have been where the seat of power is. In fact, it's still where the seat of power is. We've done well over the last 5 years, moving the number of women in the Fortune 500 in the CEO role from 4% to 8%. But that's still a big gap.
Right.
So men who have that seat of power, it's incumbent upon men to be able to take the lead in helping women to get into that leadership pipeline. It's been sometimes kind of a little comical, some of the programs I've done in helping women to be chastised for being there. There's one event that I did, 300 women. I was the only male, and I was the person who actually was the moderator. And one of the persons condemned me for being there. But
really?
Yes, absolutely. So I had no business there, quite frankly.
Wow. Interesting.
And so I said that if we knew better, we'd do better as men.
Mm-hmm.
I said, we start to know better by being at events like this. And so I said, the next time, I shouldn't be the only male here. The next time one of these conferences is held, invite your coworkers to come. That's what's changed my view in many ways. Some things that I wasn't aware of, I learned by being at these events. So be it a male in a position of authority who can directly help women, or a coach like myself who can go to events or be a part of an organization like Linkage to learn more about what it means to advance women leaders, what it takes for those women to advance, or to help male leaders have a different perspective so they see the importance of being more inclusive when they're designing teams, being more inclusive when they're giving out stretch assignments that help people qualify for work later on, and making it so that inclusion, advancing women leaders, is more than just something we do to avoid getting sued, more than a check the box activity, but really it becomes second nature because this is really what we want to do. And I'd say this, if I might, along those lines, Linkage has a program coming up about leading with superpowers and symphony, the heart of inclusion, special program we have that helps leaders develop this mindset. And we call it superpowers and symphony because when you think about a symphony, you think about different instruments that are required for beautiful music. But you can't have that beautiful music with just one instrument. You need all of the different varieties. And so we believe that diverse teams outperform homogenous teams every single time. And if you're going to do that, you want to be able to learn. This program helps people to learn from the heart because you can't legislate what a person's going to do. So this helps people want to take advantage of it. And we're really excited about this. Right now, we're offering a 50% discount on joining that program, but it's a reconditioning of the mind to be able to get leaders to this point.
I love that, and if you give that us a link to that, we'll make sure we get that in the show notes. It's hard to believe, but we are just about out of time here. I have two questions I always like to finish with. Okay. One is easy, and that is, how do people find out more about you? How do they find out more about Linkage and more about the programs and services that you offer? The second is, what is your greatest piece of advice to leaders today? As we look at, we're recording this basically at the beginning of 2022. We never thought we would still be here facing not only another surge of the virus, but we have supply chain issues. We have inflation. We have rising gas prices. We have pretty much everything you can think of to throw gas on the fire of uncertainty. So what do leaders need to do? Where do they need to focus? And what is Eddie Turner's greatest piece of advice?
Well, you can learn more about Eddie Turner at linkageinc.com, right here in my signature here. Linkageinc.com. You can learn more about the work that I'm doing as a keynote speaker, as a facilitator of learning and development of leaders, more about the conferences sponsored there at Linkage, and the assessments and coaching and consulting available. The biggest advice I have for leaders is to keep leading. Don't get complacent. Keep growing, keep leading, and help change the face of leadership.
Oh, that was awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you agreeing to do this. I could just talk to you forever, and I would love to have you back on. Don't forget to send us the link to those programs. I'd love to put it in the show notes. And thanks to our audience for chiming in again. And we will see you right here next week, 1 o'clock Eastern, for another episode of Thrive, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, really help you with everything you need to know to really change how you think and feel about uncertainty and turn it into your greatest competitive advantage. We'll see you next time.